Hello everybody, it's Kelly Folsom here, and I want to welcome you back to another Vital Art session. You know, 2020 has hit us with so many different things this year, and one thing I know for certain is that painting and beauty can be such a healing experience. So I'm so grateful that all of you are here and participating, and hopeful that your commitment to your painting practice is bringing a lot of happiness and joy, and also hopefully healing to you this year. And what could be better than right now than painting super bright and happy flowers during this time. So today we have a few different kinds of flowers. We actually have carnations, a Gerber daisy, and some of these little, I think they're called Peruvian lilies, and one rose. So, and one of my favorite color schemes, which is orange and green. So mostly today, even though this is a complicated setup, mostly today what I want to really talk to you about is the difference in the form and structure of the carnations versus the daisies and versus those roses. So let's dive in and get started. Welcome back. Please pause the video here and get this sort of rough mass in. Tone your canvas with the burnt umber like I usually do. And you just want to get this sort of loose, rough massing in of your size and placement on your canvas. So because this is a more complicated bouquet, I didn't want to spend a lot of our video time showing you how to do this part. So you've seen me do this a million times, so please pause your video, and once you get this done, come back and paint these with me. All right, the first thing I'm going to do, as I mentioned, this is a green and orange color combination, and this time I wanted just like a lighter background. So I'm going to start with this raw umber, and I'm just using my painted wall here as the color for the background. I was thinking if everything is in some shade, sort of like a greenish shade, I want it to be like a softer green than what I have in the leaves and the stems. So I just kind of went like a nice soft green. So I'm using some of my phthalo green, some raw umber to neutralize that. Raw umber is such a great neutralizer without changing the color too much. And then some Naples yellow and some white. And let's see how that looks. I think that's going to be really nice. I'm going to get I'm going to get enough of this in, and I'm also going to kind of cover up some of my sort of envelope shape outline. We need enough of this down so that the flowers can really show up against it. Now this side over here, there is a cast shadow. So I'm just going to, I still have some burnt umber in my brush, and I'm just going to kind of push out some of that burnt umber, and that will automatically kind of darken that side. I don't want to go too terribly dark back there because, again, I want this whole thing to be a little more lighter value. Kind of like, it's not high key necessarily. It's very close to high key, but it's a very light middle tone. So we still have lighter lights in front of this background and dark accents, and also some brilliant colors, obviously. So I want to keep the chroma here a little bit weaker in the background. But you know, I also like variety in the background. So if everything starts getting too much the same, I just like to, you know, maybe just a hit of something a little more high intensity mixed in will still set back. So that's probably going to be some of the color that's on those leaves. All right, primarily in this lesson, I wanted to talk to you about the difference in this in the structure of these roses. I'm just trying to quickly get all the background stuff set up so we can get to that. So I'm going to use some black and some phthalo green cool, maybe also a little bit of this Chinese orange to get a rich, deep, just a deep, rich color here for these dark greens that are back behind the daisy, because that's really going to help the daisy pop out. And I'll just kind of scrub some of this a little bit lighter. As you can see, the more transparent the color goes, the lighter in value it looks. We even get a little bit of that over here and into the glass. So let's just get some more of that into this glass. And again, don't get too hung up on exactly where everything is right now. We're just going to add to this, but I think this value is incredibly important. So in the beginning, we're really looking at the values. Do we have the darks laid in so that the lights will pop? Do we have enough background value or color laid in so that the colors will pop? That's pretty important. All right, and then I see we've actually got some darker leaves kind of coming up here. And those are nice accents against the background. So I'm just kind of squinting my eyes here just to get some of these in. And then this one, you could actually take this one off the canvas if you want to. Now, some of these do go a little more yellow, but why complicate things right now? We don't need to overcomplicate. Go for the value and the general local color first. Then as you develop the painting, you can get a little more complicated, or maybe a better word is just more specific, But right now, try to shut down that part of your mind that wants to identify every little difference in things that you're seeing. So right now we're looking for connection and unity between things. Here's another important point. If you have, for example, this white flower over here is in front of these dark leaves, make sure that you put in some of these dark leaves first so that you can paint the flower on top. It's very difficult to paint around that white flower, paint those darks around that white flower. Now, we've got this little carnation here, and then up above it is another carnation. I'm going to start that with the actual, I don't know what this is called, but it's basically the platform for the carnation. Then we have another one that's sort of stair-stepped down. And what happens because of the shape of these carnations is that the underplane of this goes quite into shadow. So I'm going to wipe away a little bit of this for the shape of this carnation, which is it's almost like half of a stop sign. 3 sides, right? So 1, 2, 3, and they're more angular. And then we have this one down here. Let's just pull away some of that green for where that's going to go. All right. And then what I'm seeing now is that I'm missing a little negative space in here in between the coral carnation and the white carnation and the daisy. So I'm going to bring back in some of that greenish. I just lightened it a little bit because it's not as dark as some of this other stuff. And then one thing you can do too is look for angles, how this carnation and this carnation kind of angle together here. How they kind of connect and become a unit. They're almost a little too side by side, but I think it's going to look okay in the painting. All right, so those are my basic shapes, and if the petals kind of extend out beyond that, that's okay. And then, of course, here is this one that's getting, that little white one that's getting that light. So you can go ahead and kind of wipe out where it's going to be. And obviously our beautiful little rose here this stuff I'm just going to kind of blend together right now because I'm not quite sure how much of that we're going to get in. So it's better to just kind of get rid of some of those construction lines and whatnot. I'm automatically going to turn this into glass just by getting in some highlight, getting on the highlight here and also here. Again, we have so many lessons that really go more deeply into glass, so be sure and visit those if we don't cover glass too much today. But one thing quickly about glass is that it does have a lot of whatever that background color is. So it's usually a lighter version of that background color. And the starting edge, much like a grape, is darker, even on a clear glass. And then light passes through the glass, again, much like a grape. Anything transparent does this, where you have light that moves through. So that side actually goes lighter. And then the leading edge, or what is supposed to be the lit edge, appears darker because light moves through the object. Okay. Just get this a little bit darker here for the cast shadow. Okay. Now, let's start getting in some of this beautiful color. So the daisy is very similar in construction to the rose in the fact that it's it's basically like a bowl-like shape. So you might think the rose is more like a bowl and the daisy is more like a slightly deeper plate, so it's a little more shallow than the bowl. So I'm just going to start with the whole local color of cad red light, cad yellow deep, and a little bit of white. Actually, some Naples yellow might have been nice. And I'm just going to kind of start filling this out. And if I pick up some of that green, it's okay, especially over here, because like a bowl or a deep plate, this side is going to fall into shadow. So that side automatically goes a little bit darker. So this one's pretty head on. So these petals, are pretty equally spaced around the center of this flower. And I think part of the difference between these, I'm going to add some red oxide in here as we come over here to the left, since it goes a little bit darker and deeper. But one of the differences between daisies and roses, though, is that the petals are a little more separate usually, and you get kind of that pinwheel type of look, whereas with roses, the petals are more just overlapped and more of a contained shape. All right, so that gets our daisy started. Actually, I think I'm going to do some burnt umber and some cad yellow deep, maybe a little bit of this green too, for the center of this daisy that goes a little bit darker. Okay, and some of that yellow that's around it, let's do a little more yellow in that mixture. You don't want any of these inside edges to be hard, so make sure you keep those nice and soft right now. I am adding some red oxide or Avignon orange, whatever you have, for some of these under layer petals that are a little bit darker. And then what I'll do is come back again with that light pure color, the cad red light, the cad yellow deep, the Naples yellow or white, whatever you have. And this is the part of this little flower that's getting the most amount of light. So we're going to lay some cleaner color on top. What size brush is this? A 2. Let me see if I can find a 0, because this little 8x10, and you guys, this would be so This setup would be so beautiful on a larger scale, so don't ever let the lessons constrain you in terms of, you know, what size you paint these, because some of these setups would be really nice on a bigger painting. I just can't paint that big in 30 minutes. So, all right. And then because you're painting wet into wet, just keep wiping your brush. Basically at this point, I can only make one brush stroke at a time, you know, yeah, or maybe two, without reloading the brush. But I don't want to blend this paint in. And then let's say as we get over to that side, it starts going more into shadow. Now, if I'd like to deepen that shadow a little bit more, which I think I do, I'm going to add more of the red oxide, the Chinese orange. Because I already have this color down, it's almost like doing a glaze. You know, I could just, even though it's a transparent color, just by layering that over it, it'll take that value down a notch and add some richness to it. So keep moving around the canvas. I'm not sure why I want to do that, but maybe that will be useful later. I just felt like maybe I should do that. All right, all these colors are similar, but I think this rose is a little more subtle of a color. So I'm going to add more white into this mixture to get it a little bit softer. And we basically, almost like a salmon type color, and we basically have this little rose, this bowl-like shape. So I'm going to add some more cab red. And inside the bowl we have a shadow. So just like painting a bowl, and then you just soften those two edges together. This side in shadow, this side's catching the light of the ellipse, and then of course we have those petals that are, I always say, escaping the herd. They're just kind of going, hey, I want to be free of you guys. And with those, they tend to kind of flatten out. I'm going to use some of this and get more light. I'm just going to pull some of that off. This is a really nice shape on this one, kind of a triangle shape. Now, there's a cast shadow under here, so I'm going to use that same deep red, and it's going to be great that it mixes in with the green because that green knocks it down. Same thing here. We've got a little cast shadow over here that goes a little bit deeper and darker. There's also one like right here. But you want this to be colorful, you know. Don't make it black or brown. You know, on these really colorful flowers, you want color. So keep it a rich color. Now, is this my zero? Good. Now we need some of the petals that are lighter. I'm going to add more of that Naples yellow, some white, and make sure I just get a clean mix. So I'm going to move this mixture, just keep inching it away from this other stuff here, this other pile here. So cad red light, Naples yellow, and some white. This is because the undercolor is so wet. What you're going to want to do is, again, make sort of like one stroke and then reload, wipe your brush and reload. This is very important when you are dealing with complementary colors too. Now, again, in the shadow, it doesn't matter because we want that color to be more muted. But in the light, you know, I've really got to make sure I get some clean paint there in the light. Now, the other thing you could do, of course, is let your paint set up a little bit, and then it won't be so difficult. But for me, having 30 minutes, it is difficult, and so I just have to keep my brush really clean and wiped off. Now, these get a little more light, exactly like this daisy over here. So I am putting in some more white on the most lit up parts of this rose. And then actually we've got, this almost goes totally yellow, this accent color. So I'm going to do some cadmium lemon into that mixture and more white. And we're going to get the center of this rose started. You know, where that little petal wraps around the center. That would be nice. We need a couple of these to indicate these little, you know, in between folds. So that's getting the basic structure of this rose going. And then again, I would recommend moving on to somewhere else. Wait, before I do that, there's just one little thing, this little V shape petal here that kind of overlaps in front of the shadowy one. I'd like to get that in there. And I think these outer ones are incredibly important. You can even steal some of the background color because it's a complementary color to kind of neutralize and get a little more shadowy look on some of the turning planes. All right. So I'm hoping by doing this you can see some of the similarities between a rose and a daisy, but of course, obviously the differences too. Now this little lily over here, let's just use some straight white. I'm going to start the stroke on the end of the form and then lift off into the interior. Some of this green is mixing in, that's okay. Actually looks really nice. But you want to make bold brush strokes, you guys. Be decisive. If it's wrong, you can take it off and do it again, you know, or flatten out the paint. Now, this one has a little more pink, which is very fortuitous since it's next to that pink rose. And that's going to keep our color a little more connected. Okay. And then I'm just going to use background color as my shadow. And then this petal on the opposite side catches the light. Okay. Maybe I'm going to go over here and grab some of this brownish stuff. There's kind of those little seeds in there. They're not seeds. They're actually like a pattern on the flower, which is really interesting. I need more of this pink. I really want this to be more pink. This is really, painting these flowers shows you the power of edges, you know, thicker edges to create form rather than just, you know, using value all the time. Now let's go over to these carnations. Again, very similar to these same colors. I love that we've got 3 different flowers, and but they kind of all harmonize and tie together because they are similar colors. I'm just going to use that same kind of salmon-y color. Now these almost are a little bit more like these ruffly pom-pom balls. There is a shadow plane though, which is here. And so you can, you know, mass in some of the local color and then start to get some of the shadow plane in. Try not to go petal by petal. You're going to be in big trouble. You want the basic shape. What is the basic shape? We're going to go back, get some more color here. Cad red light, cad yellow deep, and some white. The inside usually gets more colorful or more rich, however you want to look at that. So less white, more of, I'm going to do some Chinese orange too in here. Okay. And on these, you can really see the construction of the form much, much easier. So this angle for this shadow plane, again, this is that mixture that has more of the red oxide to get a deeper, richer shadow color. And here goes relatively straight, and then it angles up here, okay? And then we get the local color. And I'm trying to go ahead and make my brush strokes in sort of this ruffly edge-like shape to get the feeling of a carnation. You know, that's one of the differences. The carnation is probably the most different in this context. And then you'll probably see a few that get a little more light and maybe a little crisper edge of light, and you definitely want to get those. So for example here, these petals are sticking straight up and catching the light, so definitely taking that lighter. Let's do some more white. Okay, and you have to lay down the paint pretty darn thickly, and you know, with a strong decision making. So this stroke where the back edge of the carnation meets the background, it's really important that we get a thick enough edge so that that edge feels like it's overlapping in front of the background. Now that I can see this relationship a little bit better, I think this needs some more red oxide. You know, it might even need some alizarin crimson with those reds, and maybe some more green. I just feel like this is in cast shadow because this carnation is on top. So we need to get a little more depth here, a little more believable three-dimensional depth going on there by just going a little bit darker in value, but keeping it in that orange and red orange family. Hopefully you can see how that just kind of pushes that back. Every time I switch from dark to light, I just wipe my brush. And then this one has this really strong petal here. I want to establish this strong lit edge first, and then I can pull that paint up on the inside. So petals and leaves, they're always crisp edges on the outside, softer edges on the inside. So especially if you squint and you see a petal that's really clear to your eye, it's really lit up, you want to make sure you get enough of a harder edge. And also with flowers, you always want to look at the contour pretty closely once you get that big basic shape started that we began with. Okay, so that one's really coming together. I'm going to just kind of mass in this back one with some color, since we don't have a ton of time to do this one. We'll just get that basic shape, and then it kind of shows through on the other side, that darker color. Now, I'm going to pull some of this off because now we have that gorgeous white one. A lot of that background green is going to come into play here for the shadow, so I'm actually going to grab some of that. Kind of scrub some of that over. Just trying to wipe some of this off, this dark stuff off, because I need some really clean white paint there. So again, once I wipe that relatively dry, then I can actually push that paint over even further with my brush. But this is a strong edge, you know, this is like a piece of paper that's kind of folded out flatly, and it's really catching all the light. Then the underplane, or the side plane here, you know, does go a little darker, but it's a white object, so we don't want it to be super dark or like brown or anything like that. So I do want it to be, this whole shape to be overall lighter than the background, but it does need to have some background color in it on the planes that are not getting full light. Now I'm going to get this a little bit richer for, here's a cast shadow on this petal. Let's see, we might need a little bit of red there, and then I've already got this. So for me, I've got so much stuff on the palette I can pull. If I pull this color in, it's going to darken. I know if I pull in a little bit of the red, it's going to warm it up. So cast shadows are usually always a bit darker in value, but you've already got all these colors on your palette. Just use them together and you'll actually have a better, more harmonious look in your end result. Now, once I'm ready for some more light, and actually I think I'm going to put a little cad lemon, mostly white, but I am going to put some cad lemon. I think that's going to really be super nice. And I'm going to look to see where are there some other petals that are really getting hit more with light, more direct light. And usually you'll have some little, because these are so ruffly, you know, so you'll have like some little ruffly tops on those. All right. And then of course we've got another one of those lilies that's getting a lot of light. I love how they just have sort of this curvy kind of trumpet-like shape. And you know, you don't have to put all of these in. If they don't serve the composition, you can definitely take them out.